What is Freemasonry? Why is it so dangerous? And most importantly, how can we protect our loved ones from entering the craft? Stay with us. Catholic Parents Online is next. Hello and welcome to Catholic Parents Online, a program where we explore the issues Catholic parents face while raising their children. I'm your host, Colleen Perfect. In this program, Part 2, we will look at the history and structure of Freemasonry, its symbols, the first 3 oaths the members must take, a Masonic document called the Alta Vendita, and the New Age and One World Order. Most importantly, we will learn how we can protect ourselves and our families. Joining me again to help unveil the truth about Freemasonry is Mary Therese Hellmuller. Mary is a nurse specializing in critical care, and she is also a certified legal nurse consultant. She is the founder and CEO of Guadalupe Travel, and she provides pilgrimages to Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico for the past 24 years. Mary speaks the Spanish language fluently and has worked in the missions of Brazil, Mexico, and Guatemala. I'm very grateful to Mary Therese for her willingness to share her wealth of knowledge on the secret society called Freemasonry. Welcome back, Mary.
Oh, thank you, Colleen.
Well,
it's
we had
privilege,
quite a program 1.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if before we go into the second program, if you could just give us a little bit of a recap.
Brief synopsis, sure. What is Freemasonry? Freemasonry is an international society. It is one of the largest international secret societies. It is Satanic in nature. It is based upon naturalism, which says man is God. So it puts man up as a supreme being and judge and measure of all things rather than God. So man is God, and it is an international organization that its main goal is to have world domination, one world order, and to bring about this new society in which naturalism, where man is God.
Okay, well, Mary, you've called this a secret society, but also a religion.
That's correct.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, it is a religion. It is not just a simple fraternity or a fun organization that many people tend to think of them as. It is definitely a religion. And why I say this is because, a fraternity or a society in general does not build temples and does not worship in shrines or have their meetings in shrines or temples. They don't have altars, which are the center of, the activity in the shrine, kneelers where they kneel, ceremonies where they invoke different beings, and it becomes very diabolical at the very top. When you know the different levels, even just the names of the different levels give you an idea of the diabolical nature of this. Like Prince of Jerusalem is one of the levels.
Oh.
Prince of the Tabernacle is another level. Prince of Mercy. What a mockery, because we know who the Prince of Mercy is.
That's right.
And it is not a level in Freemasonry. So it is set up to actually make a mockery out of Christ and his church. And their main goal is to destroy the Catholic Church, to bring it down, and to usher in this one world order.
So, Mary, how did the secret society get its name, and are there other names that it goes by?
That's a good question, Colleen. It was back in the medieval times, when Masons were building cathedrals and castles. They would have their own little symbol that they would etch into the stone, and many of these symbols, of course, were symbols of their trade. They met in lodges, and they formed unions.
Okay.
So actually it was like a union that they formed, and the meeting place was the lodge. But what happened after the Protestant Reformation, there was less need for these Masons, and so they started accepting other people that were not true Masons, more philosophical individuals, into these unions and into the lodge, and that's how it evolved then to the Masonic lodge that we know today. In fact, the 4 remaining lodges in England joined together in 1717 to form the Grand Lodge of England, and that is the basis for the Freemasonry that we see today.
And then other names that it goes
Other
by?
names, thank you, yes. Other names, the craft. A lot of people aren't familiar with that
No,
term.
I wasn't.
Sometimes you'll just hear people mention the lodge. Illuminati is one that's very popular or common in Europe. Latin America, it's Illuminari, which is very interesting because Lucifer, is the angel of light that actually said, I will not serve God. And so he was cast down. And so Illuminati refers to light. And the luminary refers to light. It's very interesting.
It is.
And
it's certainly
actually,
telling.
And actually, yes. And actually, when the candidates come to the lodge, they are told to disregard their previous teaching and other faiths. See, it's interesting because when they come to the lodge will say, oh, yes, we embrace Islam, we embrace Catholicism, we embrace Protestantism, we embrace Hindu, all the different faiths, but they don't. They do not. Ultimately, their goal is to annihilate them, destroy them. And it's through their lessons and through their studies that they mock these faiths. But the ultimate one is the Catholic Church, because they know, Satan knows, honestly, who, where Christ is, where the true church is,
Right.
And so most of the thrust over the years has been to attack the Catholic Church, because that is the true presence of Christ.
Well, Mary, are there different types of lodges, Masonic lodges?
There are, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. And even on one of the websites I was reading, I think it was a Mason in one of the earlier levels, he was saying, I'm so confused.
Oh, really?
Believe you me, it is very confusing. But you have basically the Blue Lodge. The Blue Lodge has the 3 primary levels of Masonry, 1, 2, and 3. You cannot go on to any of the other rites. You have the Scottish Rite and you have the York Rite. Those are branches that come off from the Blue Lodge. You must complete the Grand Master, the 3rd level of the Blue Lodge, before you can go off to those other levels. And that's where it becomes more and more diabolical. That's where you have the levels called the Prince of the Tabernacle, Prince of Jerusalem, Prince of Mercy. You can see very clearly how diabolical this is, because that is no prince. It's not our prince. It's not Jesus Christ.
That's
It's not our faith. But that's where it becomes very evident in those levels. So, yes, those are the basic 3 levels of the Masons. But then, the different names, going back to names of the lodge or Masonry, you have Shriners, and people don't realize the Shriners are also a level of the lodge or part of the lodge, and typically it's very high on up in the lodge, and that's the Arab.
People are just so they don't understand, because they
don't.
think Shriners, that's a circus.
Yeah,
We bring our children
fun.
there.
Yes, fun, and they have.
But it is so deceptive.
Yes, and yes, they have. They do good works, but again, that's that smoke screen to really veil the true nature of Masonry, the diabolical nature. So people are led to believe that, yes, this is a very good organization. Yes, it is based on Christianity, or it's based on the Quran, or it's based on whatever holy book. They will play whatever. They will use whatever religion that candidate is. And they will take oaths on that holy book. But the ultimate goal of Masonry is then to negate all the teachings of that holy book. Because really they're out to replace that religion with the religion of Freemasonry and naturalism.
So they're pretty much brainwashing people
Absolutely.
out of
Absolutely. And it's a subtle, gradual. However, many people say, oh, the first 3 levels, those people really don't understand what they're joining. But from what I've read, you have to know that something isn't right. Even in the very first 3 levels, you're told to disregard your religion. The come on is,
we're
brotherly love and we embrace all religions and all faiths, but yet When they're there,
Right.
disregard your previous teachings, your religion,
Mm-hmm.
and because you are actually coming out of darkness and into the light of fellowship. That is exactly what they are told.
Wow.
So it's very interesting because, number one, that would put my alarms up. Something isn't right
yes,
with this,
definitely.
But the oaths that they take, are very specific. They are, they take oaths of obedience. I mean, it is very strict obedience, and it's under penalty of death.
Wow.
And some of the oaths, it includes that if they would reveal any of the secrets, that their tongue would be cut out of their mouth, their throat would be slit. Very violent
Yes.
type of oaths.
Wow.
And another one is that their chest would be opened and their beating heart plucked out of their chest and placed upon the highest pinnacle.
Why would anybody want to take that oath when they see it and
Exactly.
read it? I mean, that's bizarre.
Exactly.
You'd
It's
think
very
you'd run
bizarre.
for the hills.
It's and that is just a glimpse of the diabolical nature of Freemasonry. When you just take a look, we don't have to know everything, and I don't know everything about Masonry, obviously. And one will probably never know until you're in the inner depths and the inner circles of Masonry. But what we do see, you can make a judgment. You can say,
Right.
yes, this is clearly not Christian. This is
That's right.
clearly diabolical.
That's right.
So it is quite easy that way. But they do throw out all the other philanthropy and all the good things that they do as a smokescreen to lure people in and to deceive them. Freemasonry is a master at deception. But you know where that comes from? That comes from Lucifer. That comes from
Yes.
Satan.
Right.
He is the ultimate
Right.
deceptor.
So another interesting aspect are the symbols. Can
The
you
symbols.
touch on that a little bit?
Symbols, there are so many
And
symbols.
people are, I'm sure, have seen the symbols.
Symbols, the most common one is the G with a compass, and then you have a ruler, in the form of a V. And initially, the candidate is told that stands for God, God of the universe. And then later on, it stands for geometry, which I started to laugh because who would build a shrine or a temple and who would have these elaborate ceremonies and things for geometry?
That's right. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. So, but the deception is that they don't know until the higher levels that basically what it is the generative power. G is generative, and it refers to the male organ quite plainly, and speaking very, very frank with you. A lot of the symbolism is very sexual. You're dealing with naturalism. You're dealing with paganism and the occult. And so many of the symbols are phallic, what we call phallic. They have another visual connotation, a sexual connotation.
Okay.
So, yeah,
It
it's
ties
interesting.
right in with this whole demonic.
Right, and the other symbols, the all-seeing eye comes from Egypt. Basically, you have all kinds of things, pyramids. You have obelisks as signs, of Freemasonry. The torch is the light of Lucifer. Per one of the Masons themselves, it was a quote unquote, and I forget who, I forget the name at this point, but anyways, it was the torch of Lucifer. So it's very interesting. Everything is seen in a different way.
It sure is.
Yeah, for the common person, you wouldn't see it that way, but ultimately, when you get up into the upper levels, it is all twisted, and it's a mire, and it is satanic.
And they make it more, they take all these issues, make them very
Right,
sinful.
right, right.
And like you
Exactly.
say, pornography and lust.
Exactly. And in many of their ceremonies, there's nudity. In the third degree, which is the top of the blue lodge, when they're taking their oath and the candidate is taking their oath, he has to strip down to his shorts, bare-chested. He puts a rope around his body. They blindfold him. It's very interesting, but it even gets worse. It progresses even worse up in the upper levels, even to a point where their ceremonies are have human sacrifice at the very top levels.
Oh, wow.
Is what I'm told, which is a real eye-opener. So I didn't want to believe it, but it was confirmed in one of my own personal experiences, which I'll share later.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, Can you explain what the Alta Vendita is?
The Alta Vendita was a document, it was a Masonic document that was drawn up, I think it was 1800s, but it was basically, Freemasonry knew that they couldn't destroy the church completely. They had tried, but they could not completely destroy the church. So what they changed their form. What they said then we need to do is infiltrate it. So we're going to infiltrate it, corrupt it from within to bring it down. And then that will ultimately spread out to society, and it'll bring about the one world order, the New Age, you know, their whole society based on naturalism.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it was several popes. It was actually Pope Pius IX and Pope Pius XII that had asked for that to be published, and asked that the people knew about this, you know, in a widespread way, because you can't fight an enemy unless you know the enemy.
That's right.
I mean, you do have to know to a certain degree. I don't like spending a lot of time on the occult, which is Freemasonry. I don't like spending a lot of time, but you need to spend enough time that you know your enemy, so that you don't get trapped into the deception.
That's right.
Because it is so twisted and so powerful. So the popes were hoping that this would be widespread, and unfortunately it was not. And people really aren't aware of it, but you can get it. John Venari has a book published, and you can get it now. There's a lot of information out there. You really have to search and keep in mind, you know, because there's a lot of also propaganda out there that just says that this is a wonderful brotherhood, beautiful society. So.
Well, Mary, what do you mean by Masonic changes in society?
Well, Masonic changes in society, you bring in pornography.
Definitely, yeah.
Bring in sex education. You socialize public schools, socialize medicine. So you have control over medicine. Okay, what comes next is mass birth control, mass sterilization, all of those things, abortion, because you have to have one social network. And you can't have one over here that says they're pro-life and one over here say, no, they're all for abortion and, you know, partial birth abortion. No, it has to be all compiled into one if you're going to have a one world government. So what we're talking about is having one money, one government. You're going to have one health care, one world order, which means one world religion. Those are the changes in society, and can't we see that now? You can see how Europe has gone to one money. And I was very interested, you know, because I had traveled to Europe before the euro came into being and before the European Union. Well, one money, you know, was a little interesting for me, because that's when I started seeing the one world order and the European Union. So it's very interesting how it's all connected, because now you see how one of the countries is falling, another country is falling economically, and another one and another one. They can't stand on their own now. No. You know, and it is a real danger. But you know, this is also part of the whole plot of Freemasonry and the One World Order, is that you have to have an economic collapse, a worldwide economic collapse, in order to build then the foundation of this One World Order.
Well, Mary, now could we have you share your personal experience with us?
Yes. Yeah, it's very interesting, because I belong to a very conservative Catholic church, very beautiful. Have orchestra masses. I love music. It's very much a part of my life. And so I would go to these masses. It was a Latin mass with the Minnesota Orchestra. And after one of the masses, a gentleman pulled me by the arm and said, "Oh, would you come to coffee and donuts for me?" And I said, "Well, sure." I mean, he was sitting up in the front pew, and he was in a three-piece suit, so I thought, okay, fine, you know. I mean, I was taken off guard. So I was taken down, escorted down to coffee and donuts, sat at a table with a group of mostly men, and there was one other woman. And they started talking, and because of my studies of Mexico and knowing about the Freemasons and the revolutions in the world, key words started popping up. And I looked at them and I said, "Are you Masons?" You know, and I looked at each and every one of them, because then, you know, they started talking about a little blue book and different things. And I went, "Are you Masons?" And they looked at me and they said, "Well, we're only in the first levels." I said, "You can't be a Mason, and you can't be Catholic and a Mason." You can't be Christian and be Mason, you know? And they said, oh, no, you know, they then spoke about all the good works that, you know, Masonry does, you know, the Shriner Hospital, you know, all the philanthropy, you know, projects and all the money. And I said, but that's just a smokescreen. And I said, you butchered and martyred my heroes in Mexico.
Good for you, Mary.
And I said, this is part of the New Age movement. You know, you are the one world order. You are behind the one world order. You are the big businessmen, the bankers, the, you know, the money that is pushing all of this into this crisis that we have. And I said, you've got to get out of Masonry. I said, you've got to go to confession. You can't be receiving the sacraments and be Mason. And then they went on to tell me.
They were just stunned that you were saying
well,
this.
I was just so on fire. I couldn't stop.
Right.
And so then they looked at me and they started telling me who in St. Paul, Minneapolis area were Masons and, you know, just trying to kind of cover it up and make it not look so bad.
Right.
And I said, I'm not impressed. I said, this is a diabolical order. I said, at the very top levels, you have human sacrifice. And so anyways, one of the young men said, oh, I've only been in the level, you know, few years. But I knew as he was talking and as he was defending, I thought, no, this gentleman knows far more about Masonry, and he's been in for a lot longer. And so I knew he was lying, and they do lie to further their cause, you know. So anyways, then I said, well, I'm going to give your names over to the priest here. And you cannot be, you know, coming to Mass, and you can't be receiving the sacraments. And they got a little upset with that. And I said, I'm going to be praying for you. But after that, what happened is that I started getting phone calls one by one from each of these guys. They were trying to wine and dine me to the finest restaurants, to the finest places, you know, trying to court me, because really their ultimate goal was to recruit. That's why they were there. They were to recruit members. And they knew that, you know, I, you know, traveled internationally, and they were kind of interested in the work I was doing and all of that. So I said, no. I refused, you know, each one. I said, no, you don't get it. I said, I will not go out with you. I will not go to dinner until you stop, you know, until you leave the Masonic Lodge. You have to go to confession and get back to the sacraments. There is no relationship. So anyways, then I got a phone call saying, oh, well, Mary Therese, you know, maybe you won't make it to Mass on Sunday. Kind of a general threat.
Oh, my.
And I'm like, oh, my gosh. You know, I mean, it wasn't an outright, but it was kind of a, you know, a hidden meaning behind that, because a lot of people are either, they have fake accidents, you know, that are setups, or they disappear. So I started really thinking about it. I began to get really concerned. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I was very worried about my family. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to go public. I'm going to go down to that Coffee and Donuts, and I'm going to go to every other table down there besides the Masons, and I'm going to tell everybody what the Masons are and who these people are, right there.
Good for
and
you.
that'll put a stop to it. And if anything happens to me, then it just validates. It just validates everything that I'm saying about the Masonic Lodge.
That was smart thinking.
So I did that, and you know, they stopped coming to Coffee and Donuts for a while. And then eventually, this went on for a year and a half, this kind of struggle. I'd bump into this young man, and I'd say, I'm praying for you that you get out of the lodge. You must get out of the lodge. And then I'd go to the next table, and I'd say, hey. You know what the lodge is? It gave me an opportunity to share my knowledge about the Freemasonry. So anyways, what happened then after about a year and a half, after Mass, I was genuflecting, and this young man actually grabbed me hard by the arm and said, Mary Therese. And I go, I am so sick and tired of this. I said, this has got to stop. I said, we have nothing to discuss until you come back to the sacraments, you go to confession, and you get out of the lodge. And his lips started to quiver. He had tears in his eyes. And he said, that's what I want to talk to you about. He said, I want to thank you for challenging me. He said, for a year and a half, I've never had anybody ever challenge me like you have. He said, I have gone to confession, and I am back to the sacraments.
Oh, praise God.
And I said, oh, that's wonderful. But I said, you know what? They're going to be after you to come back. And I said, it's not that easy leaving the Masonic lodge, and especially after the oaths that you took. And I said, you're in danger. And he goes, yes, I know. But he said, I want to tell you, everything that you told us there at the table about diabolical worship, about Satanism, about one world order, about human sacrifice is 100% true. He said, I lied to you. I was not in the first levels of the Masonic Lodge. I have been in for 17 years, and I was their ritual leader.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah, and that's what validated it for me. It was just like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, there is hope, you know, for people that have been or that are in the lodge, but you do need to get out. And it takes a lot of prayer.
It must. I was going to say it has to be very frightening to get out,
Right.
and very, very dangerous.
It is very dangerous, and the best thing is never to get involved with the lodge, never to be sucked in, so to speak,
Right.
to their philanthropy or their sweet talk and brotherhood.
Right.
And a lot of young people fall for this in fraternities, which is a real danger.
Oh,
You know, Yale has a famous fraternity called the Skull and Bones.
Yale.
Yale.
Yes.
And that's a Catholic university, so to
Yes.
speak. And that is Masonic.
Oh,
And many of the people that have been a part of that fraternity, it's a senior year fraternity.
Oh, okay.
Many of those people have gone on to high levels in government and service all over the world.
There's so much we could talk about. We're almost out of time, and I do want to cover definitely what is the best way to protect our children and our families from this happening. Because I know you've said they
Right.
are recruiting, and
Right.
they're
They're
going
recruiting.
anywhere, anybody,
Right.
any age.
Any age. You've got Daughters of Job. You've got the Rainbow Girls. You have the Demolay group, which is for young men. You have all these other allied associations, Eastern Star. All of these are Masonic off branches. They may not know the diabolical nature of the Masonic Lodge, but they are also, they're a part of it. They help support it financially.
So what do you say is-
you need to educate them in the faith and the Catholic faith.
Yes, you
Begin
definitely.
the Baltimore Catechism. You
Yes.
know, the Baltimore Catechism can be taught to anybody. It's so simple, and that was the
is.
beauty of that catechism.
That's right.
You know, you're not going to pick up a big catechism and have a theological discussion with your children.
Right.
The beauty of the Baltimore Catechism is that it was so simple and everything was laid out, and children can learn it.
That's right.
You must get back to the basics.
Right.
Stay in the state of grace.
Yes.
You know, and you know, keep your eyes open, and you must speak out courageously. If you know somebody, you must say, no, that is not a good organization,
That's
or
right.
that is not it is a diabolical organization. So
Mary, I just can't thank you enough. I'm sorry we don't have more time, but this has been wonderful. And
Thank you.
We're going to have the show on for a month, and then we'll have it on our website too. So
yes. Oh,
God
thank
bless you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
Thank
We'll
you.
keep
It was
praying
an
for one
honor.
another.
Thank you.
We hope you'll tell others what you've learned about this dangerous secret society. And if you missed part 1 of this program, you can find it on our website at catholicparents.org. Thanks for watching, and God bless you and yours.